a chick in it, make her gay!
Maybe we should go a different route than we did with Indiana Jones.
Put a chick in it and make her name it gay!
Picture for a moment that one day you plant a tree. You start out with a simple seed that begins to grow slowly but surely. After a few years, you look out upon your treasured deciduous and notice that it's borne fruit. Delicious red apples. And when they mature, you pick one every day to eat. Until one day, the apple you choose is not what it seems. On its surface, it looks like all the others. But as soon as you bite into it, you find it's decaying from the inside. So much so that its core is nearly rotted away. If that tree were a franchise, it would be the MCU phases 1 through 3. And that disgusting apple would be Captain Marvel. A film so hollow and devoid of substance, it essentially derailed plans for a new wave of Avengers films set around the titular character. Titular. Despite the first film being a massive financial success, though seriously a blank screen playing fart noises could have grossed $1 billion between Infinity War and Endgame, Captain Marvel failed royally to connect with audiences. This was pretty evident by the fact that the character has since been relegated to just a few small cameos post-Infinity Saga, even with her being touted as the most powerful hero we've seen up to this point.
There's no competition for me because I'm the strongest, so it's just kind of like a different...
Oh, yeah, you should let her think that, but...
Is that like a personal attack or something?
As well as the future of Marvel films.
Is Brie Larson Captain Marvel? I'm sorry that you have to Google that. I feel like the Disney execs are super bummed about that.
Well, after dragging their feet as long as they could, the inevitable has finally happened and the Marvels has hit theaters. Not with a bang, not even with a whimper. It begins with near utter silence from an audience that tuned out years ago. Cutting off their nose to spite their face, Marvel has tried to hide any and all information about this film from the public, most likely specifically Gary Nerdrotic. Why do this?
I don't know.
It certainly hasn't done anything to drum up interest, and only succeeded in making the studio seem even less competent than ever. It's amazing to think that just a short time ago, Marvel really believed that Carol Danvers could herald a second golden age of comic book films, maintaining their top position at the box office indefinitely. However, as we've seen with films like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Thor: Love and Thunder, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the market is definitely trending backwards. One can make several arguments as to exactly why this is occurring, but I think it's fairly evident that hitching the wagon to the wrong horses is most likely the reason. Captain Marvel being the head of the pack. But how does the Marvel stack up compared to some of those other train wrecks? Let's find out. The film opens up with our new flavor of the month villain Dar-Benn, as she and her diverse crew of man-bun-wearing space baristas find a Bengal that is identical to the one Kamala Khan received in Ms. Marvel. Oh, what's that? You didn't watch that show? Don't worry, they have you covered. After about 10 minutes of runtime padding flashbacks to get you up to speed, we pick up right where Ms. Marvel left off. We see that in some unexplainable way, the three protagonists have become connected to each other through their powers. How is that possible? No clue, since one got her powers from Infinity Stone splooge, the second by walking through Wanda's mind torture bubble, and the last via FedEx. By the way, great hero journey on that last one. But I'm sure they won't explain any of this in a satisfactory way. After several sequences of frenetic, nonsensical CGI-aided combat, which I can only describe as ADHD in movie form, we are finally treated at what at best can be charitably described as a plot involving the remnants of the Kree Empire attempting to revive their fallen world of Hala after a civil war that we were never shown. In order to accomplish this feat, they must rupture the space-time continuum with interstellar jump points to steal the necessary resources from other worlds. These being air, water, and solar power. Why steal these from multiple planets, instead of just doing the much easier task of using one of the thousands of Kree colonies to create a new homeworld? Well, as it turns out, the Kree consider Carol to be the annihilator of their society and have decided to target planets important to her as revenge. First on their hit list, Tarnax, a Skrull refugee camp. Which is strange because I thought the whole point of Secret Invasion was they didn't have a place to live. Well, after successfully suffocating that world with minimal effort, they turn their attention to Alanda, a planet who exclusively communicate through song and dance like some strange Bollywood nightmare. And if that's not your thing, you're probably in for the worst 8 to 10 minutes of your life. As it turns out, Carol is actually married to the prince of this world for some reason they don't bother explaining. But my guess is that they really couldn't resist making Brie Larson into a Disney princess. After easily accomplishing their goal of drying up this world, I'm sensing a pattern here, they turn their attention to Earth to steal the sun. Rather than going into a play-by-play of exactly how the completely incompetent villain fails at this, spoiler alert, let's just say Earth survives and there's now a gaping hole between universes. Yay, more multiversal bullshit. With zero explanation as to how, Monica knows the exact way to fix the problem, which unfortunately for her requires that she gets trapped on the other side of the hole, which she successfully closes much to the chagrin of Auntie Carol. Oh, and as it turns out, that's the Fox X-Men universe, by the way. I didn't exactly go into this expecting much of anything, but holy shit was this bad. It's pretty much plain as day that this movie suffered hard from the dreaded 3 R's of production. Rewrites, reshoots, and recuts. With storylines that are wholly incomplete picking up in what is most definitely Act 2, and other plot points that seem to continue from a film that was never even made, the whole thing just turns into a jumbled mess. Which really sucks because honestly there was at least a few good ideas within it. The concept of people swapping places due to a quantum entanglement is a fantastic idea in theory, but never really gets explored much past surface level gags, and is dropped nearly as quickly as it's established. And that's not to even mention the fact that they completely gloss over the Kree Civil War, which would have added layers of depth to Captain Marvel's character that she desperately needed. To say that this role hasn't worked out the way Brie Larson expected is an understatement of celestial proportions. This was meant to be a mutually beneficial relationship. Marvel was getting an Oscar winner still in the prime of her career to lead their ill-advised female revolution. And Brie was getting that role that was going to catapult her into the Hollywood stratosphere, making her one of the most famous people on the planet, as it did for actors like Robert Downey Jr. before her.
Is Brie Larson? I feel like you don't need to Google this, by the way.
Well, fame yielded to infamy, as her press tour began to rub both fans and other cast members the wrong way.
There's no competition for me because I'm the strongest. So it's just a fact. It's not a personal opinion.
Yeah, Jess, you're just not that strong.
Right, guys?
Yeah.
Isn't it fun being there for all my extra takes?
Grind you up.
It wasn't exactly helped by the fact that her performance was so wooden, Beavers could have built a dam out of it. Which, if used on her mouth, might have actually saved her from saying dumb shit like this.
Is Brie Larson left-handed? Why do you need to know?
Honestly, the fact that the Stan Lee tribute intro is forever attached to the first film is damn near a crime. And no, Brie, no one in the world really thinks you were sincerely thinking about Stan when you posted this self-indulgent garbage that you tried to pass off as condolences. I think it's safe to say that Marvel quickly realized the issues at hand with Brie, as not only was her role in Endgame significantly reduced, she has yet to appear in anything more than a brief cameo since. In fact, it's rather telling that it's been 4 years since the first Captain Marvel film, and we're now just getting the sequel that's not even really a sequel. It's an ensemble piece, further downplaying Captain Marvel's place in the MCU. If there's one positive I can offer about her performance here, it's that she's no longer easily confused with a mannequin, as she's not acting like an emotionless husk anymore. Unfortunately, it comes off as more of an overcorrection for a character that has seemingly no direction. Throughout the film, you kind of get the sense that Brie is checked out and is just going through the motions, acting wildly different from scene to scene. It might be some weird way to show off her range for future roles, or maybe she's actually having a mental breakdown. Either way, it's pretty clear that she's not especially interested in remaining with the franchise.
I don't know. Does anyone want me to do it again?
And if reports are to be trusted, she's currently looking for an exit strategy. And let me be the first to say that if these claims are true, I think I speak on behalf of her favorite demographic when I say this.
I do not need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me what didn't work for him about A Wrinkle in Time.
Good riddance, bitch. If there was ever a character who was basically created to fill diversity quotas in comics and subsequently the films, it's Kamala Khan, aka Ms. Marvel. A character plagued by incomprehensible levels of unoriginality and even less in the way of interest. Everything about her is borrowed from other more compelling characters. In the comics, her powers are a rehash of Mr. Fantastic, and in the MCU, Quasar. Even her name is stolen from the early, significantly better days of Carol Danvers. Iman Vellani as a person may be adorable and fun, but on screen it just comes off as cringy. The level of fangirl she exudes is on par with that of the Taylor Swifties of the world, which doesn't really make any sense when you think about the fact that she shouldn't even know much about Captain Marvel to begin with. Seemingly the only thing she has successfully replicated from her idol is the inability to connect with an audience, as basically no one watched her show and her comic has been cancelled multiple times before killing her off. As much as I want to give Iman the benefit of the doubt here, I seriously can't. The script does her no favors by constantly having her scream in the most annoying way humanly possible. And her fandom is teetering on lesbian obsession, which honestly I'm shocked Disney hasn't pulled the trigger on yet. It's a real shame that a person like Vellani, who by all accounts is a sweetheart in real life, is saddled with such an unpopular character in a tacked-on role that no one could give two shits about. To round out the ranks of the Effemgers, we have Teyana Paris as Monica Rambeau, a character that no one remembers from a show that most of us would love to forget. A hero so obscure that her name has been changed 3 times in the comics and no one really seemed to notice or even care. You'd think since a younger version of her appeared in the first film, it would feel like she made sense in this story, but somehow she feels even more foreign than Kamala. In her one other appearance in the MCU, she didn't even mention Auntie Carol, and seemed to have moved on with her life, only to be shoehorned right back into this story. In fact, I distinctly remember when I was watching WandaVision, I didn't even realize they were the same person. That's how random her inclusion was. And quite frankly, despite it making way more sense, it still feels the same here. The most unfortunate aspect of Monica's character is that she's written in a completely unrealistic way for the audience to understand. Using large words for large words' sake, and just knowing details she shouldn't, she's more of a plot device than a character. Sam Jackson reprises his role as Nick Fury for the umpteenth time, and frankly, it doesn't seem like he'd mind being the next victim of Marvel's feminist agenda. I'm sure he'd welcome being replaced by a strong female version at this point.
Put a chick in it and make it fucking gay as fuck.
I mean, look at him. He's dead on the inside. He used to be one of the best parts of these films, and was able to teeter on the line between serious and funny perfectly.
I recognize the council has made a decision, but given that it's a stupid-ass decision, I've elected to ignore it.
But now the only line he seems to be walking is the one between boredom and exhaustion, as his performance comes off like he'd rather be anywhere else. A trend that has most definitely continued from the god-awful Secret Invasion. Side note, I'm about 99% certain that Secret Invasion was the original Captain Marvel 2 script, but it was scrapped and repurposed when they realized the character couldn't carry a film by herself. Honestly, I don't really want to be too hard on Jackson here. Since he's not decrepit looking, it's easy to forget that this guy is 74 years old, and he's been playing this character for a decade and a half. So personally, I think his apathy is justified. When you have such an allegedly epic crossover with characters that no one cares about, you really need to have a villain that will captivate an audience. One that will transcend the role and really pull the story together. You need a Thanos or a Galactus. A threat that's too big for one single hero to overcome. So tell me, who did they choose as an anchor for such an important tentpole of the MCU?
This is just the beginning. Your powers only make me stronger.
Anybody can type.
This is Dar-Benn, a character so unnoteworthy that I, a person known for pulling random comics out of my ass on every stream I've ever been on...
That's your superpower, you could just summon comics into existence from the ether.
Didn't even know who it was. Which is especially sad considering upon doing my research, I came to the realization that this character was invented by one of my all-time favorite writers and former mentor, Ron Mars. Sorry, Ron. I hope this doesn't change things between us. It doesn't help that they gender swapped the character for no apparent reason, which is actually extremely un-MCU-like to take a male villain and make it female. But I guess there just wasn't enough estrogen in this film yet.
Then we've got to pander harder!
How was this villain the one they landed on for such a supposedly important installment? Forget about being Galactus, hell, even Mole Man would have been an improvement here. Played by Zawe Ashton, an actress who's never been in a single thing I've ever seen in my life. Which really begs the question, how did she even get this role? Well, that explains it. She might be the single least convincing villain I've ever seen, and doesn't seem to know what her motivation should be or how it should be acted in any scene she's in. And don't even get me started on how she has zero gravitas and is less menacing than your average kindergarten teacher. She honestly looks like a soccer mom in cosplay. You'd think being romantically connected to the actor who plays Loki, some of it would rub off on her, but clearly that wasn't the case. This may be the first time I'm gonna praise the pacing of a Disney production since starting this channel. And likely the only time. But I really need to say this. At an hour and 45 minutes, I must admit that this was a nice trim film that allowed me to get outside while there was still some daylight. Which is a good thing because had I walked out of the theater into a depressingly dark night, I may have made some bad decisions from that point forward. Unfortunately, despite it being the shortest Marvel film to date, it might as well have been the longest as it felt like every minute dragged on for an eternity. Occasionally you'll hear me give recommendations such as avoid the large drink as to not need to use the restroom mid-film, but in this instance, if for some reason you decide to subject yourself to this garbage, I will actually give you the opposite advice. Consume as much caffeine as humanly possible. Take a look at the label on your drink of choice for the maximum daily allotment, and pound that shit before seeing this. Cause honestly, you're gonna need it to avoid passing out. This channel does not condone the abuse of caffeine. If you have a heart condition, please consult your doctor before having caffeinated beverages. Or better yet, for your health, just don't go see this movie. What is there to say about a Disney production that hasn't been said before? A bloated budget, poor marketing, the wrong actors, the list goes on. At an estimated cost of $274.8 million? What the fuck are they spending all that money on? Seriously. I'm gonna write a shitty script for them. It holds 5th place out of all MCU installments, with 3 of those being Avengers films. For context, with a runtime of an hour and 45, that means that each minute you suffer through costs Disney $2.6 million to produce. Assuming you're in a theater that uses an alphanumeric seating system, with that kind of money, you could buy a Porsche 911 for each person in the row in front of you, every 60 seconds for this entire god-awful atrocity. But who are we kidding? That row is empty. So you luck out today, imaginary consumer with deep pockets. At that price tag, they're looking at a break-even mark of somewhere in the realm of $600 to $700 million. A number I highly doubt they'll reach. Hell, if they crack the 500 mark, I'd be shocked. In the end, the Marvels holds a unique position in the MCU, and that position is that of a cautionary tale. It's impossible to manufacture an audience where there isn't one. By telling everybody that this is who you're gonna root for simply because you tell them how strong, smart, funny, and great they are, without earning the respect of an audience through tragedy and triumph in the face of adversity, you're left with nothing but a hollow shell, one that cracks under the first sign of pressure. Think back for a moment to that apple. Once bitten into, your mind was made up. It wouldn't matter if someone told you, no, you're wrong, it's tasty, and you're a misogynist for not thinking so. Nothing would change your mind. Not even if you took other unimportant, pointless ingredients and mashed them together. In the end, that apple will always be exactly what you remember it as, a disappointment rotten to its core, just like Captain Marvel, and subsequently, the Marvels as well.